Addiction is one of the most misunderstood psychological conditions. Most people think addiction is simply a lack of willpower, a bad habit, or a moral weakness. But psychology and neuroscience tell a very different story. Addiction is not about weakness. It's about learning, memory, and survival systems in your brain that have been hijacked by repetition and reward. Whether it's nicotine, alcohol, scrolling, caffeine, or even emotional dependency on a person, every addiction follows the same core mechanism. Your brain associates a certain behavior or substance with relief, comfort, or pleasure, and then repeats it automatically. To quit any addiction, you don't just need motivation, you need a structured psychological approach that retrains your brain to stop seeking that artificial reward. Let's go through 5 scientific steps that can help you break almost any addiction, steps grounded in behavioral psychology, neuroscience, and cognitive therapy. They are simple, but not easy. You will need awareness, honesty, and consistency. But if you understand why they work, you'll start seeing results in less time than you expect. The first step is awareness, pure observation. You can't change what you don't understand. Most addictions operate on autopilot. You don't consciously decide to open social media, light a cigarette, or pour a drink. Your brain has linked that behavior to a moment of stress or boredom. Studies in behavioral neuroscience show that the prefrontal cortex, the decision-making part of your brain, goes offline when habits are triggered. So the first task is to bring the behavior into conscious awareness. For the next few days, every time you feel the urge, pause and notice. What are you feeling right before you reach for that thing? Anxiety, emptiness, restlessness? Write it down. Name the emotion. Naming interrupts the loop. It brings activity back to the rational brain. Even this single step, repeated several times, can start to weaken the automatic cycle because the act of noticing creates distance between you and the behavior. The second step is identifying the cue-reward connection. Every addiction is maintained by what psychologists call the habit loop. A cue triggers a routine, which delivers a reward. The cue might be stress, boredom, or loneliness. The routine is the behavior itself. The reward is usually dopamine, a feeling of temporary relief or pleasure. For example, when someone scrolls endlessly at night, the cue might be emotional exhaustion. The routine is scrolling, and the reward is distraction from their thoughts. Once you map your loop, you can start disrupting it. The goal is not to eliminate pleasure, it's to separate the cue from the behavior. You might still feel stressed, but you can teach your brain that it doesn't need a cigarette or a drink to deal with it. You replace the routine, not the emotion. This brings us to the third step: substitution. You can't simply erase a habit, the brain doesn't work that way. It's like trying to delete a neural pathway that's been reinforced thousands of times. It's nearly impossible. Instead, you create a new pathway that competes with the old one. Research from MIT's Habit Lab shows that habits never truly disappear, but they can be overwritten. For instance, instead of scrolling when bored, you might step outside, drink water, or do push-ups. The trick is not to find something dramatic, it's to find a replacement that gives a mild reward. If it's too unpleasant, your brain won't choose it. If it's too easy, it won't distract you. When you substitute consciously, the cue still appears, but the response changes, and the reward eventually shifts to something healthier. Over time, this rewires the dopamine system itself. The craving begins to attach to the new habit, not the old one. The fourth step is emotional regulation. Most addictions are not about the substance or behavior, they are about escaping an emotion. Whether it's loneliness, shame, anxiety, or boredom, addiction becomes a way of not feeling something uncomfortable. So if you never learn to sit with the emotion, you'll always find another outlet. Emotional regulation means learning to tolerate discomfort instead of escaping it. When you feel the urge to give in, pause and observe the craving in your body. Don't fight it. Notice where it sits. Is it in your chest, your stomach, your hands? Rate it from 1 to 10. This technique, known as urge surfing, comes from mindfulness-based relapse prevention. The craving rises, peaks and falls like a wave. If you can ride it for 5 minutes without acting on it, it will pass. You'll realize that cravings are not commands, they're sensations. Once you experience that, the addiction starts losing power. The part of your brain that believed you had to obey it starts learning that you don't. The fifth and final step is restructuring your environment. Willpower is not enough if your surroundings are full of triggers. Addiction thrives in familiarity. The brain associates certain people, places and times with the behavior. That's why smokers struggle when they drink coffee, or why scrolling feels irresistible before bed. Environmental design is a psychological tool. If you remove triggers from sight, you remove half the battle. Keep your phone away while working. Don't buy the snacks you're trying to avoid. Change your route home if it passes your usual drinking spot. Make it harder for the behavior to occur automatically. The easier an addictive behavior is to perform, the harder it is to resist. So, design friction. Make the healthy choice easy and the unhealthy one difficult. It's not cheating, it's neuroscience. But beyond these 5 steps lies one deeper truth. Quitting is not a one-time event, it's a process of identity change. If you see yourself as a person trying to quit, your brain still identifies with the old pattern. But if you begin to see yourself as someone who no longer does this, your decisions start aligning with that identity. That's the same principle behind cognitive dissonance. The brain doesn't like inconsistency. If your self-image changes, your behavior tries to match it. That's why successful change is not about fighting who you are. It's about redefining who you are. Real-life examples prove how powerful this is. A man who smoked for 20 years didn't quit by focusing on nicotine. He quit by deciding that, I am not a smoker anymore. He started rejecting cigarettes the same way he would reject something that simply wasn't his. Another example is a person addicted to social media. Instead of deleting apps impulsively, they studied when and why they opened them. They noticed it happened most during stress at work. By taking short walks instead, they slowly retrained their mind to seek relief elsewhere. After a few weeks, the craving lost its intensity, not because the phone disappeared, but because the association did. Each of these steps feeds into the next. Awareness helps you spot the cues. Understanding the loop helps you replace routines. Substitution leads to emotional regulation. Regulation prepares you to reshape your environment, and all of that builds into a new identity. You can apply this framework to almost anything. Junk food, alcohol, pornography, social media, even toxic relationships. The principles remain the same because the brain's learning system is universal. It doesn't care what the reward is. It only cares about prediction and repetition. If you teach it that the old pattern no longer brings the reward, it stops asking for it. Now, you might wonder, why do relapses happen even when people know all this? Because addiction is not erased, it's overwritten. When stress or strong emotion hits, the brain can temporarily revert to the older pathway. That's not failure, it's memory. The key is to notice it quickly and realign. Every time you resist, the new pathway gets stronger. Every time you relapse consciously, but reflect instead of judging yourself, the old one weakens. Self-compassion, not guilt, accelerates recovery. Studies in clinical psychology consistently show that shame fuels addiction, while compassion reduces it. So instead of saying, I failed, say, I noticed. That simple shift keeps your brain in learning mode, not punishment mode. There's another psychological angle too, delay discounting. The addicted brain values immediate rewards more than future outcomes. That's why just one more feels reasonable. To reverse this, practice small delays. When the urge hits, tell yourself, I'll do it in 10 minutes. Often, that pause is enough for the craving to subside. You're not forbidding the action. You're postponing it. This trains the prefrontal cortex to regain control over the limbic system. Over time, the delay itself becomes a form of mastery. You realize you don't need to obey every impulse the moment it appears. Addiction recovery also benefits from what psychologists call implementation intentions. Instead of vague goals like, I'll stop drinking, you define clear plans. If I feel stressed at night, I'll make tea and listen to music instead. The if-then structure builds automatic responses that replace old habits. You're programming your brain ahead of time so that when the cue appears, the new behavior activates. That's how habits are rewired, through consistency, not intensity. Ultimately, quitting addiction is about reclaiming agency. It's about teaching your mind that you're not a passenger in your own body. Neuroscience shows that neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change, never stops. Every time you make a different choice, you carve a new path. It's not about quitting perfectly, it's about practicing control repeatedly. Each repetition strengthens the new identity you're building. So when you hear, quit any addiction in 10 minutes, it doesn't mean instant transformation. It means that within 10 minutes of awareness, you can begin the process. You can break the cycle in real time by noticing, naming, substituting, and riding the urge instead of obeying it. Change starts the moment you stop reacting automatically and start observing consciously. That's where freedom begins, not in punishment, not in willpower, but in understanding how your mind works. Addiction is not stronger than you, it's just a pattern that has been rehearsed more often than its alternative. The brain doesn't play favorites, it only reinforces what you repeat. So repeat awareness, repeat choice, repeat compassion. and you'll find that the behavior that once controlled you gradually loses its hold, not because you fought harder, but because you learned smarter. That's psychology, not magic. It's how the brain unlearns what no longer serves it.